folks, and welcome back to Four Corners of the Galley. I'm your host, PBO, and today you're joining me on another edition of our Totally Bingin'. This is a show dedicated to binging television. All your favorite different television shows that we binge all across all of our different streaming services. And today's episode is dedicated to Alternate Carbon, the new sci-fi show from Netflix. So I just had the diligency of watching the entire first season of Alternate Carbon. I binged it over a few days, and it's okay. It's okay. I was really looking forward to this show because it looked really interesting. It's got a little bit of Blade Runner mixed with a little bit of iRobot mixed with a little bit of some other stuff, and the premise is really cool, and it's got a lot of stuff going on, but the overall story and the world building, it's just a little too much. It gets really, for lack of a better word, it gets lost. And you kind of get lost, like the Lost in Television show, you kind of get lost like that, where it's throwing quite a few things at you in the first 5 episodes of the show. It's a 10-episode show. First season, and in the first 5, they're throwing so much different stuff at you and doing flashbacks and back and forth and this and that and building the worlds and explaining things. Man, halfway through, you're just completely lost. I remember I told myself at about episode 2 or 3, all right, there's a lot going on, and I'm trying to figure it all out, and I can't get it all straight, so I'm going to just watch the show, let it just tell me, and it came a little easier at that point, but there's a ton. So let me give you basically the overall premise of the show without spoiling anything. I'm not going to spoil anything because the show is a big, giant murder mystery. So basically, it's Blade Runner done really stylistic like Blade Runner, punk, the futuristic, the bright colors, the rain, the dirtiness, the underworld belly kind of style of the Blade Runner, mixed with a little bit of Game of Thrones and Japanese samurai kind of thrown in. So this show starts off where you meet this gentleman who's being rebirthed. And basically the way it works is we live in this futuristic time where people have the ability to change in and out of other people's skins, or which they call sleeves. They call the human body the sleeve. And they've created these things called stacks. And they're these little memory card systems that kind of go on our neck. And these stacks record everything about us. Our memories, our consciousness, our souls, our heart. Basically, everything is put in these little stacks. So they can take these little stacks out and then place it into another sleeve. So then you essentially get to walk around in someone else's body. And that's kind of the main concept for this show. And it can get very confusing because other people wearing other sleeves, disguised, it just gets all over the place. So basically the basic concept starts off where this gentleman, which is called an envoy, and this envoy are these old rebels from the past that were fighting against this people that were colonizing the world, and they were fighting to stop it. They were the rebels. And they kind of had like what they consider a magic power, but what it more like is they kind of had like a sixth sense in a way where they were just really high trained fighters and then kind of had the ability to anticipate things in front of them. So that's why they're called an envoy. So this envoy gets basically his stack is taken from a pile, I guess is deep frozen, and he's reinserted into a different body and brought back to life to help out with this really extremely rich individual who lives in this world now. And he wants to find out who murdered him because he was just murdered and his stack was removed and put into another body, but he can't remember his murder. So that's the whole premise of this show is he brings back this old rebel envoy, puts him in a new body of this person, and he's going to now try to solve the mystery and murder of this very rich individual. But the controversy that does start with it is they're taking basically a Japanese person or Asian person and putting him in a white person's body, and he's the lead of the show. The lead of the movie is Joe Kinnaman, but he's playing a person called Tonk who's actually Japanese. So I can see how that rubs people wrong. And then he has the abilities of this Japanese warrior who's an old envoy who knows samurais and fighting skills, and he somehow knows all this consciousness, but in this body of this white gentleman who's actually the detective. So I can get off the back, it rubs people wrong. It rubs me wrong in a lot of ways. Because there are moments in the show where you see him looking into the mirror and then remembering his old envoy self as an Asian person. And then they show that Asian actor act out those scenes. So it can get really way back and forth because a lot of this show it basically, he's in his own mind remembering his old former self and his old body. It gets real trippy because these stacks go into different people's bodies, but they're just kind of like they're like their robot arms they use and their skin that they use, and the rich even treat it like that, where the people have multiple clones of themselves, and they clone their sleeves or their skin so they can replace themselves at different points. I mean, it's really all over the place. It has great concept and a great world build, but the execution of the characters and what they're trying to do, it's just way too much going on. So he meets this rich gentleman, and he tells him basically, I need you, this envoy, who's Joel Kinnaman, who's the main character, meets this rich person and tells him, I need you to figure out my murder. You have my money and wealth to go about it and go figure it out. So he kind of goes on this old adventure. So he's trying to remember his old ways, and it's like 200 years in the future since he's been pulled off of what I guess like a deep freeze they call it, and he's trying to figure his way out. He meets this detective named Ortega, who she's now working with the main guy, Brendan, and it's really confusing back and forth. Basically, the Joel Kinnaman character, Tom, starts accumulating people to help him. He meets this other individual, and he basically uses him as his right hand. He goes to a hotel that is actually run by a computer system and an AI, and a lot of people don't like staying in them because the AIs, I guess they call them like they're like jealous girlfriends because they're always around, and it's got a lot going on in this. The main thing is you're trying to figure out who killed this very high rich individual, and at the same time, each episode they're showing you a little bit more of this world and a little bit more of Tonk's memories. So you spend an entire episode where you go back into his past, where he's an envoy, or he first joins the envoy, and you meet him as a rebel. So for the first 4 episodes, you're in this desolated, futuristic world with rain and weird bright lights, and then it takes you all the way back to this grassland planet. I mean, it's all over the place. About episode 6, it kind of figures itself out, and it starts streamlining the story, and then it really just focuses more on the murder mystery. And it gets a lot better towards the end, but the payoff for what the mystery is and how everything is connected is really just poorly written, and I just didn't believe it and trust it. At the same time you're going through the story, they're doing a lot of, they're trying to entice you with this world, so there's a lot of gratuitous nudity, honestly, and it's got a lot of Game of Thrones. Now, I don't mind it at the beginning because you understand these people are like sleeves and stacks, and they're at the beginning and they're naked, they're coming out, but they just have nudity for no reason. They just wanted to have it so that they can throw it in there. It's just for whatever purpose. I just don't get the purpose of the story. It's just to entice you, to make you think, oh, this is a cool show because it shows nudity. Not really. They're trying to pull that Game of Thrones, but there's a reasoning behind it. Game of Thrones just doesn't, in the middle of a battle, throw out naked people in the middle of it, just like, hey, here's some naked people while they're fighting. Like, that's kind of what they were going for in here. There's a lot of hand-to-hand combat. The battles are really cool. Very Japanese as battles, and lots of hand-to-hand combat, and those were always real great. Like, every episode has a really good battle scene, but it's like they purposely are putting in the nudity in the battling to keep you interested in this very crazy, high concept, 30 strings in the air that they're all trying to grasp together and pull back down and get the story right. I mean, it's a lot going on for something that's trying to start you off in this world and really set you up for the future seasons, and they're just throwing a lot at you in 10 episodes. I mean, they shouldn't have thrown so much at you. It shouldn't get to the point where it gets to at the end so fast. I mean, it's a lot going on. I can tell you, it's a lot going on. It's a lot of confusion. What I did like about this, I love the visuals of this show. I mean, it's absolutely gorgeous. Like I said, it's set in like a Blade Runner world, so the visuals are gorgeous. The colors, the lights, the futuristic things they show, the different abilities, all beautifully done. But I feel like the characters and the writing is just so poorly executed. The actors are kind of overacting each of their roles because one person is inside of the body of another person playing another person. They have some funny moments, but not a lot of humor to it. There is one moment where they take a woman, they put him in a man's body, and that's kind of funny. And then, and she just has to deal with it because people with no money in this future, have to take whatever sleeves is given to them. So if you're murdered or you're a young person, then you can just get placed into any sleeve that's for free. If not, these sleeves are extremely expensive. And that's why it's a rich versus poor. At the same time they're doing this, there's a huge divide in this world where the religious versus the non-religious. And they kind of bring that element in there too. The religious people don't believe in this whole sleeving and stacking, and they believe in just their body that they were given. So there's also a large contingency of people that only want to live one life, and once they're killed, and that's when they move on, and they don't even believe in it. So you got a lot of pull from that, but they don't really focus heavy on that. They only have a few characters that do that. And then they have a zealot working for one of the overlords kind of doing that, but they don't really bring in any more. I mean, they go to a church, but they don't bring in like more of the church. I mean, I don't know. It's like they want to just like sprinkle in every little element and just touch every little thing without really giving the full focus on what they should. They should, if this was a murder mystery and you're learning about these stacks and these different things, they should have stuck to that instead of trying to back build people's stories and front load other stories, give you some misdirection here, give you some misdirection there, put people in different skins and I mean it's a lot all over the place. It definitely is a very interesting show, but I don't know if it's for everyone. If you have the patience and you love sci-fi and you love mystery and intrigue and trying to connect the dots, then you might enjoy this. You might really enjoy this. But if you just want a good story and something that's gonna hours of entertainment, you're probably not gonna enjoy this because you really have to focus deep on what they're trying to figure out, because they're throwing a lot at you at a lot of different places. I mean, I remember one character, I think you see him in 4 different sleeves at one point. It's like, whoa, and how are you supposed to decipher that guy is that guy with that? I mean, it's kind of a lot. It's very ambitious with this world and this show that they were trying to create, and I felt like they bit off a lot more than they could chew in that first season, when they could have spread out a lot more and give you a cleaner story and just kind of focus more on the main streamlining story instead of trying to like interweave a lot of the different things. I feel like they interweave and things that just like at the end it just a lot of it fell flat for me. When the big reveals came, I just was like, okay, I kind of saw some of that coming, but what? All right, I guess if that's the way you want to go. And then the ending, I don't know. I don't see where the show is going to go in the next season. That's just kind of where I'm at right now. Like, okay, they almost close that. No spoilers, but spoiler enough. They solved the case at the end. I mean, they figured it all out, and they solved the case, and there's lots of twists and turns to it, and all these different things that happen. But at the end, I don't know what they leave open enough to create this world in second season they want to do. I feel like you could have ended the season with the mystery solved and left a lot more things open that would have helped out more. I just don't know where it's going to go from this point forward. So I'm very intrigued and interested to see if this show does come back for a second season and where this show might go. So there you go. My score for this show, honestly, it's a 2.5 out of 5. It's an average score. I feel like the overall 10 episodes, the first episode's really good. The 2 through 5 are really mushy and kind of get lost in a lot of different things. The last few episodes are much more better. They fleshed out a lot of the characters, and you've gotten through a lot of the nonsense, so you understand the story a lot better and you see where it's going. But the overall payoff of the show and what it's going for, it gets lost. It has a beautiful concept and ideas, but I feel like the execution, the way it ends, it just doesn't match up for what it is. There you go, folks. So if you're going to binge this, I say take your time with it. I would give this a 1 a day because there's so much they throw at you. So I would call this a 10-day binge, people. 10 days. Give it 1 per. Other shows, I like to get like 2 wins so you can really build up that momentum and you feel like you're watching the show and you're getting some stuff across. With this one, you might need to take your time because it took me my time. And certain episodes, I would stop in the middle because it just kind of got lost on me. So there you have it, folks. There's our review on the Netflix series Alternate Carbon Season 1. I'd like to thank you folks for joining me today on this episode of Totally Binging. Until next time, guys. Good night, Ted.